right there.
Chills down your spine.
This thing was big.
Is Bigfoot out there? This expert team of true believers fans out across America
Sasquatches do exist.
and uncovers evidence.
These are the best prints I've seen in my life.
As we know, Finding Bigfoot was quietly shut down in 2018 after 6 thrilling seasons on television, leaving many confused. Animal Planet reported that the team had run out of ideas and decided to end all operations, but many weren't satisfied and demanded a better answer for the show's shutdown. Now, after 7 years, thanks to recent clues, we finally have the answers, and they are not looking good. So what are the true reasons behind the shutdown, and what makes them so disheartening? Join us as we delve into the troubling stories behind it all, the reasons and the shutdown. Let's begin by going back in time to April 24, 2018, the day when Animal Planet announced Finding Bigfoot would end with its 100th episode on May 27th. The reactions to this sudden announcement were mixed. At first, the sudden report sounded normal to some people. After all, most reality shows usually thrive the most through the first few seasons.
Let's talk Bigfoot, people. Now, when you think of the legendary beast, you're probably thinking of a deep forest and not the bayou. But our first story shows that there may be a Bigfoot living just 35 miles from the Big Easy.
After which it either gets ignored for new content or slowly gets irrelevant over time. But this was where things got interesting. Contrary to the more specific details revealed by Animal Planet on why the show was shut down, the numbers showed no sign of slowing down. Finding Bigfoot was still ranked among Animal Planet's top programs. It was clear as day that Finding Bigfoot wasn't losing viewers, and it seemed odd that common issues like a limited budget and lack of ideas were enough reason to shut down a show as successful as it was. What made things even stranger was the behavior of Bobo Fay after this shocking announcement. He was perhaps the biggest lead researcher on the entire project, and when the cameras stopped rolling, he didn't try to move on to other projects. Rather, he kept doing the same things he did during the show. For Bobo, the search for Sasquatch had nothing to do with being creative or struggling with a limited budget. During interviews, Bobo repeatedly insisted that the search was like a calling to him, saying that finding Sasquatch was noble and worth pursuing. Though the show was a success, he never filmed an episode for fame and entertainment. All of Bobo's efforts implied that the show only existed because he and other researchers truly believed in the mission and wanted viewers around the world to be a part of his journey, not because he wanted fame and primetime success. And that wasn't all. Many easily pointed out how too many coincidences occurred with how the shutdown happened. All of a sudden, there were no permits allowed for filming in any of the key forest areas where he believed Sasquatch lived. His most advanced equipment that had worked for years suddenly started failing for no explained reason. Airspace restrictions and new federal regulations cropped up with new rules that made filming the next season almost impossible. The details in these new rules seemed too specific to be coincidences, and every practical means of investigating Sasquatch was blocked in a matter of weeks. Multiple online sources with ties to the show and the surrounding ecosystem made the government directive behind these sudden changes clear. If something confirmed or inferred cannot be controlled or weaponized, it is to be eliminated or contained immediately. While this idea sounds disturbing in its simplicity, it easily explains why Bobo Fay became a problem, why cameras set up in the most critical regions suddenly went dark, and why the narratives surrounding a mere reality show were managed too strictly. Bigfoot at this point was no longer the main concern, but a decoy. It had become a distraction from something much bigger, and every time the team got close to finding evidence for the thing proven to be much more frightening than Sasquatch, oddly specific legal problems would suddenly emerge out of nowhere. Somehow, at the same time, drones were jammed, land access was denied, and multiple forest authorities that favored the expedition suddenly turned against the crew. The mystery only seems to get deeper when we think about the economic and legal consequences of a true Bigfoot discovery. Entire forest regions the size of whole states would become protected without prior warning. And strangely enough, This is what suddenly happened at the exact time leading to finding Bigfoot's shutdown. It is no surprise that federal laws like the Endangered Species Act have caused a strong legal enforcement that cancels all expeditions and uses of land, pointing to everything finding Bigfoot was about. As far as the authorities were concerned, if Bigfoot existed in any way close enough to be documented, it would destroy the lumber and real estate industry, an asset class that is currently valued at over $21 trillion. For this reason, keeping the forests off limits and the creature's existence unproven serves multiple interests as far as the higher-ups are concerned. From multiple legal covers to long-lasting financial protection and protection of the U.S. economy, it seemed strange how the future of multiple American large-scale lumber and real estate industries oddly relied on the existence and success of a mere reality TV show. But it doesn't stop there. Many more clues point to this. The shutdown and cover-ups. Satellite imagery and credible reports from late 2015 to late 2018 show a growing pattern of multiple zones across the American Northwest suddenly being closed to exploration. Oddly enough, these places that shut down within this time frame are the same areas that have the highest reported Bigfoot encounters. We are talking about large areas spanning Washington's Olympic Peninsula to the Klamath Mountains of Northern California, places where Bobo Fay and like-minded researchers had easy access for their operations before getting suddenly denied out of nowhere. Even more surprising are the reasons for these denials as risks of wildfire and hindrances to efforts made to protect endangered species. These revocations suddenly came up during the filming for the final 2 seasons of the show, making the process increasingly difficult as time went on. This implies that canceling the filming had more to do with legal constraints rather than creative burnout, and all the clues point to this. Multiple investigative maps cross-reference the sudden shutdowns with the places where the reported accounts happened. And while these reports are largely criticized for lack of evidence on tape, it seems even more credible when investigated in light of the sudden shutdowns and legal efforts made to stop the search. It gets even more bizarre when we note that over 62% of the newly restricted land zones were the historical sighting areas of unexplained natural phenomena. This was way too specific for general preservation efforts, with additional conservation efforts being too tight to ignore. Among these additional efforts were low-altitude drone and aircraft supervision that have been pointed out by local residents but barely acknowledged by the Federal Aviation Administration. Another clue too obvious to ignore is the biological anomalies and energy projects in these areas. For those deeply rooted in researching these areas, one term always seems to pop up in all the official records: bioresearch corridors. And contrary to what the average person would think, this isn't a public term, but is used to refer to forest conservation and efforts to promote renewable energy. But this is where things get shady. The Klamath region is known officially as a bioresearch corridor, but unofficially, it is next to a Department of Energy testing area for geothermal systems and subsurface mapping. Despite being put up as a zone adjusted to conserve wildlife and the environment, ecologists who have studied the region suggest that while the efforts made by researchers assigned to region are commendable, the results show evidence of soil contamination, unexplained subsurface heat that goes beyond mere geothermal testing and unusual electromagnetic readings that don't go along with the high-energy research implied in official records. With his system set up, whenever Bigfoot stories pop up in these zones, they are dismissed as superstition due to the unexplained natural operations going on in those areas. One former natural parks contractor anonymously describes it as the best way to hide something extraordinary. We see a similar pattern happening back in 2019 when a small archaeological team near Mount St. Helen reported finding geometric stone formations deep inside an uncharted ridge. But before their work could continue, all research permits were taken away, and the entire area was blocked for safety and rehabilitation. Worse yet, all their data logs suddenly vanished from state servers shortly afterwards. Later that same year, a veteran hiker and Bigfoot researcher Daniel Lopez, recorded a brief video showing what he described as a step pyramid-like mound covered in moss and soil, not far from one of those restricted regions we've just pointed out. The video went viral within a week, gathering millions of views and hundreds of thousands of comments on how it changes everything we've known about history and archaeology. Yet, barely a week after it got uploaded, it got taken down from the platform for violating the terms of service. May believed what he found were the remnants of pre-colonial and pre-native structures, the kind of stuff that would cause the known history of North America to get rewritten from scratch. And while many might argue this might not be true, both sides admit that the consistent element that remains factual is the suppression of what was actually discovered, whatever it may be. Worse yet, it perfectly matched the recurring pattern that had happened for decades at that point. Good evidence comes to light. Access suddenly closes with a horrible explanation as to why, followed by accusations of sensational pursuits and claims of inciting conspiracy theories without proof. This is made even more obvious through Bobo Fay's work after the show got cancelled. And while talk about the show quietly dwindled over time, the reported sightings of unexplained creatures only got more bizarre. Bobo stayed active by launching the Bigfoot and Behind podcast with fellow investigator Cliff Barackman. During a 2020 symposium, he spoke about many more photos and videos of unknown creatures which are yet to be released for legal reasons. That statement would age like prophecy, as I've had the next 5 years. New footage of encounters that aligned with these descriptions began to come up, and each time Bobo's name, at least his methods, would come up across multiple online debates on the validity of these encounters. So without further ado, let's get to it. More encounters with Sasquatch. We will now continue with the famous Oklahoma River encounter from January 2024, the time when one local fisherman recorded a video on his cell phone that would put the online world in a frenzy for several months. In that 12-second video was a tall, broad-shouldered figure walking through the cold waters. And though it garnered lots of attention across multiple media channels, the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation called it inconclusive, claiming there was no clear evidence of an unknown primate species living in that environment. Barely a month passed before Bobo analyzed everything on an early 2024 episode of Bigfoot and Behind. He broke down the clip as much as he could, pointing out that the forward-leaning posture was more in line with something that wasn't human. It was definitely a primate as far as he was concerned. He believed it was more consistent with older sightings reported by investigators from the Pacific Northwest. But here comes the interesting part. During the podcast episode, the former Sasquatch hunter pointed out that areas like Hughes County were becoming quietly restricted without public notice. This was confirmed by satellite data spanning from late 2018 to early 2024, and it showed dozens of no trespass zones, relating to the same pattern Bobo experienced that led to the closure of the old TV show. Things got a lot wilder by spring of 2025 with the Sierra Nevada footage, the time when one hiker in California's Nevada mountains uploaded a drone footage showing a dark and upright figure striding across a snowfield between two pines. The clip got millions of views in just 2 days, and while it looked like an internet prank at first glance, many took it seriously because of the man behind everything. It turned out the uploader wasn't a young man lolling for internet clout, but a retired U.S. Forest Service surveyor who was well respected within and beyond his community. Bobo wasted no time talking about this, stating how absurd it would be for that figure to be a mere human. If it were a person, then this man would have been many nukes away from any trailhead with no protective gear. As far as he could tell, no one would do that unless tired of being alive. What made this so viral was the location of this encounter, an off-limits zone that has been shut off from non-surveyors and riddled with military sensors and energy survey markers. From Bobo's perspective, if Bigfoot wasn't real, the strange containment of the region needed explaining, as well as the strange dismissal of the experience of a U.S. Forest Service veteran who was of sound mind and body during the encounter. But assuming it was all a hoax, Bobo believed there were huge problems with the event, implying that the Bigfoot narrative was used as a tool to steal attention from the hidden operations being done in that area that remains unexamined. The next event was the most recent, happening in rural Kentucky near Cannon Creek on October 1st, 2025. A local hunter filmed what he called a humanoid silhouette moving between the trees at dusk. The video was uploaded on Mystery Lores later that day, racking up millions of views before vanishing due to alleged copyright issues. When it finally got restored, federal agents had come knocking on his email with formal requests for digital copies of the video. On a recent episode of his podcast, Bobo implied that wherever the feds show up right after a Bigfoot clip goes viral, it completes a pattern that has repeated itself from the time his show got shut down. But even more surprising was the backlash he received from the science community. Their responses to all his efforts were unbelievable. Bobo Fay and the science community. Among the brightest minds in the science community, only one trusted expert has made an effort to at least give Bobo's claims the benefit of the doubt. Jeffrey Meldrum, professor of anatomy and anthropology at Idaho State University, was curious enough about this that he had written an entire book on it 5 years before the first episode of Finding Bigfoot. Sasquatch. Legend Meets Science was published in 2006, and in that book, Meldrum gave various analyses that prove that while no concrete evidence is found, there is reason to believe something unexplained actually exists out there. And even though Meldrum made no strong claims about what he believed, many in the science community were quick to put down everything he said almost immediately. Things got so bad that a 2006 Deseret News reported that Dr. Martin Hackworth, a physics lecturer at Idaho State, described all of Meldrum's work as fringe science difficult to look at. Hackworth accused Meldrum of thinking he could capitalize on being the voice of people who have been shut out by the scientific community. Even colleagues working in the same department as Meldrum pulled no punches when talking about all his research on the topic. Other academics, like cultural anthropologist David Daegling, called the footprint evidence something that couldn't meet the most basic scientific standard of repetition. According to Daegling, while some of Meldrum's claims look credible, none of them hold enough to standard procedures. Primate ecologist Daniel Schmidt spoke about this as well, and with his many years of studying the behaviors of primates throughout evolutionary history, he spoke a lot about the many flaws of Meldrum's conclusions. Schmidt insisted there had to at least be a chain of study before any conclusion. Among others adding fuel to the fire was Esteban Sarmiento, a former researcher who worked at the American Museum of Natural History. And while he wasn't as harsh as Schmidt and Daegling, he was quick to point out that Bigfoot was an unconfirmed hypothesis. It had always been that, and Meldrum's years of research and published work did not change anything in that regard. All Meldrum's research on Bobo's claims had going for it were the engaging stories that were at least worth listening to, but no conclusions should be considered until there are actual biotic samples to work with. The nail in the coffin for most people came in late 2014 when an Oxford University DNA study analyzed 36 hair samples that were submitted as Sasquatch evidence. Unfortunately, all the samples were easily identified as belonging to known species of very common animals like bears, raccoons, wolves, cows, and even humans. Other researchers who looked into this years after Bigfoot aired and got canceled focused their eyes on Bobo and all the claims made on the show and podcast. And this was where things took a huge turn. You see, one of these researchers specifically targeting Bobo over Meldrum was Ranai Holland, a field biologist who ironically worked with the Finding Bigfoot team while the show was at its peak on Animal Planet. And even though Holland worked alongside the team on multiple operations, the field biologist always called out claims made on camera, bringing every evidence into question and demanding clear documentation before any conclusions could be made on anything. There were signs of this before the show was canceled, and Holland's views only became apparent to everyone much later. But despite these, FOIA requests have shown internal documentation of alleged sightings in the Okanogan-Wenatchee National Forest, 2016. Still, these files were taken back and kept away from the public for years. Either way, what can be said is that Bobo Fay encountered something in those restricted places, something so alarming that the authorities had to do everything they could to halt the process required to collect concrete evidence. It is the clue revealed by Bobo, one which perfectly explains why Bigfoot was shut down. Something right now is lurking in those restricted forests, and only time will tell what it is and why it has remained hidden after so long. So, what do you think? Is Bigfoot real, or were Bobo Fay and many others like him way over their heads? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Click on the next video on your screen. You will enjoy it.